In this video, we're going to look at how you can enter supervised stats and just have a quick review of what supervised stats are in Coligo and in our practice. So we're still on September 27th doing stats for today. As you will remember, we've already entered the group stats, we've canceled the group, we've done a mini group with Hansel and Gretel, we've done a mini group with these 5 people after their group class this morning, and we've copied forward bookings and added in Mickey Mouse individually, and now we're ready to talk about supervised minutes. Before you enter any minutes for your residents, when you're on the page, and I have mentioned before in part 2 of copying forward bookings that you will see 10 resident bookings per page. So when you look at all 10 residents on your page, I do suggest that the first thing you do is make sure that all of the correct modalities are in place. Once all of the modalities are in place, then you can go ahead and enter all of your minutes. Once you've entered your minutes for all 10 resident bookings and modalities, then you can press save. That's the fastest way to do your stats. So just take a quick look before you start doing your stats to make sure that all of the modalities, all of the treatments you did with the residents on this page that you're currently on are in place before you start doing your stats. Now, just for the sake of description, what we are going to do is just look at how to enter supervised minutes on this page. So let's start by looking at tens. When you're using a tens machine, you do actually have to take time and look at the resident's skin before you apply the electrodes to make sure that the skin is intact and there is no redness or other areas of breakdown. It does take a couple of minutes to bare the skin, whether it be to lift up the shirt or lift up the pant leg or whatever preparation of the resident to have the skin available to you so that you can apply the electrodes. Once you apply the electrodes, then you have to make sure that the resident has a method of contacting you or a bell to ring or something in case something goes wrong with the TENS machine. So that does take a couple of minutes. Once the resident has the TENS machine on, you're probably going to be seeing somebody else either in the same room or in a close or adjacent room so that you can be doing some direct treatment with somebody else while that resident, for example, Joe, has his TENS treatment. So let's say that Joe has his TENS treatment for 15 minutes to his low back, and while he's having the 15 minutes, you're with his roommate doing some other exercises. And I don't have anybody on the list here that it could be, but let's just pretend, well, here, let's add Indiana Jones, and let's say that you were doing some treatment with Indiana Jones while Joe Black was having his treatment. So I'll just add in, for the sake of quickness, balance training. So you have put on the electrodes for the TENS onto Joe Black, which took a couple of minutes. And now Joe is sitting there with the TENS on, and you go to his neighbor Indiana Jones and you do some balance work with him for 15 minutes. I'll just save the minutes for Indiana Jones for now, just for the sake of showing it to you. So you've finished your balance training with Indiana Jones and you go back to Joe, and Joe has obviously not wanted to do his strengthening today. You could have done the strengthening with him while he had the TENS on, perhaps, if it was appropriate. Otherwise, you would see the roommate. So Joe has had the TENS for 15 minutes. Now you are turning the TENS machine off and you're carefully removing the self-stick electrodes from his low back, re-sticking them, maybe wiping them down with an alcohol wipe and re-sticking them on the plastic, putting them back in the Ziploc bag, and double checking his skin to make sure that there are no adverse reactions to the TENS, and leaving Joe as you found him, whether it be to pull back his shirt down or bring his pants back up and let him do his belt back up, and setting him back up in his chair or his bed or however he was when you found him. And that also takes a couple of minutes. So it may take, 5 minutes to get him set up on the TENS and to take him off of the TENS. And that's fine. Once you do that, then it is important to take note of those minutes. So let's say that the amount of time that it took to get him set up and taken off of the TENS was 5 minutes. That's the direct amount of time that you spent with him. So that's the amount of time you would add into the direct column. The second column of stats here, S, is for the supervised time. And that's where we would enter the 15 minutes that he actually spent sitting with the TENS while you were with Indiana Jones doing the treatment. Okay, so it took 5 minutes to put the electrodes on, get him set up, and to take the electrodes off and make sure that he was fine before you left him. And it took 15 minutes for him to have the TENS while you were with somebody else and supervising him at a distance. So I'll enter those stats. That's an example of supervised stats. We also have various cardiac or aerobic type or exercise machines where residents can be by themselves, but they do need to be supervised at a distance for safety, such as the X and Flex or a leg bike, like a stationary exercise bike. So perhaps Alex, it took you a couple of minutes to get him set up on the bike and make sure he was fine, and maybe he biked by himself for 5 minutes while you were with somebody else for 5 minutes. So that 5 minutes where he was biking by himself is supervised. And it may have taken you a couple of minutes to get him set up, a couple of minutes to take him off and help him back into his wheelchair or help him back to his chair in the activity room or whatever it may be. And you may have gone back to check on him during the 5 minutes. So let's just say that the getting him set up and taking him off and checking on him in between time took 5 minutes. You would enter 5 in the direct. So you actually spent 5 minutes taking care of him while he did this treatment, and he was doing it on his own for 5 minutes. That's the idea for the supervised minutes. Again, TENS, Mickey Mouse. Maybe for Mickey Mouse, it took a little bit longer to get him set up on the TENS and take him off of the TENS. It's however many minutes you think it took you directly where you were actually having to do something to get them set up and take them off of the TENS. I'm using 5 as an example. It may take you 6 or 7 minutes. Let's not get too bogged down with the amount of minutes. We do try to keep the minutes rounded up or down to the closest 5. So if you spent 6 or 7 minutes, let's round it down to 5, just for ease of calculations. If you spend 8 or 9 minutes getting somebody set up, you can round it up to 10. So that way it kind of evens out in the wash. And maybe Mickey Mouse was alone with the TENS on for only 10 minutes. So the 10 minutes is the supervised amount of time that will be calculated for him. Okay, let's just take a look actually at how your daily total changes as you save these minutes, which I haven't been doing so far. And you should know that it's only the direct amount of time that you spend with residents that adds up into your daily total at the end of the day. The reason being, for example, when Joe was sitting by himself for 15 minutes with the TENS on, you were actually spending 15 minutes with Indiana Jones. So it wouldn't be right that the supervised minutes also count in your daily total, because then that 15 minutes is being counted twice, right? So just keep in mind that the amount of time in the direct column is what adds up in your daily total. The supervised time does not add up in your total. So let's take a look at what happens when we add the 5 minutes for the TENS that we spent getting Mickey Mouse set up and taking him off of the TENS, and the 10 minutes that he was sitting by himself. Right now you're at 95 minutes total for your day, or an hour and 35 minutes. When I save Mickey Mouse's time, that 95 is going to change to 100. And that 10 minutes, oh, sorry, it's because I added the other time here for Alex too. That wasn't saved yet. Sorry, bad example. Let's take another one here just so that you can be sure that what I'm telling you is true. Farley Mowat, maybe he had to have some heat on his hamstrings before you were able to stretch his knee through passive range into more extension. And it took you 5 minutes. Again, I'm using 5 as the example because it would have taken 3 to 6 minutes, I'm imagining, or 7 minutes to get him set up and check his skin before putting the hot pack on. And then once you take the hot pack off, making sure that his skin is okay and blah, blah, blah. So let's say 5 minutes. And he maybe only sat there with 5 minutes with the heat before you actually did the stretching. So let's save this now that I see that there are no other minutes to be saved. Once I do click on save, you'll see that the amount of time that you spend with the residents will go up to 110 so that it doesn't make a liar out of me. There we go, 110, because that 5 minutes in supervised does not get add up into your total. So I think that that is an easy way to explain how the supervised minutes work. And If you do have any further questions, just let our support office know, or you can also refer to our clinical policy and procedures manual where there is another written explanation and some examples of how to enter supervised minutes.